Welcome to What is Going On in the UC. Today, we are going to talk about the second generation. Yes, the second generation. Now, talking about the second generation may step on some toes because there's already a subculture there called second generation. But second generation doesn't necessarily mean second generation. Now, let me explain what I mean. Second generation, in the external sense, has come to mean the people who are born from first generation Unification Church members, people who were not in the Unification Church, who joined our first generation, and the children of those people are second generation. And that is a very external way of defining what second generation is, and that's fine. But that is not causal, okay? That is resultant reality. It is not the causal reality. So let's talk about the vertical and subject internal meaning of second generation. Let's go back to when the Israelites left Egypt and they were poisoned with concepts about Egypt. Egypt is a big metaphor for the yoke of Satan and sin and the bondage of Satan and sin. So first generation tend to be poisoned by their experience in Egypt, meaning the outside world or the world outside of the church, the realm outside of the blessing. Now, second generation Israelites were born in the wilderness, had no attachments to Israel, and this made them more acceptable to the idea that God will take care of them because they had seen God take care of them in this nasty thing called the wilderness. And so they have no problem going across the Jordan River and doing some rough and rugged fighting because they absolutely believe that God is with them. And we do know that second generation were not the only people to cross the Jordan River. Joshua was actually a first generation person, but he had a second generation spirit. So he was able to cross the Jordan River, and not only was he able to cross the Jordan River, but he led the second generation across the Jordan River. Now, what does this mean? This means that there is no second generation without first generation. Actually, Joshua and Caleb were the victorious spies in the 40-day spy mission. And why were they victorious? Because their report saw in it a clear path to victory based on the knowing, the faith that God was on their side. Now, what does that have to do with us today? You hear a lot of talk about, oh, second generation have to come up, second generation have to do this, second generation have to do that. And I'm going to be quite clear with you on this. I am not impressed externally with second generation. I am not impressed with the external view of second generation. I am not impressed with the mere fact that second generation physically come from the bodies of first generation people. Why? Because I've worked in church-related programs and know that there are even two types of second generation. There are second generation who are second generation externally, and that's fine because that's the raw materials for something that God really needs. But then there are second generation who really embrace something, the internal meaning of second generation. So I'm sure if you've done any kind of church work with second generation, you kind of know that some kids embrace the heritage more than others, right? But have you ever thought about what makes the difference? And have you ever thought about why the difference matters? These questions, I'm going to say them again. What makes the difference between the two types of second generation? And why does that difference matter? Well, here's my opinion. We can learn from the story of Joshua and the Israelites crossing the Jordan River that there is no successful second generation without a successful first generation. So what makes a successful second generation in the unificationist sense? I don't want to go into a real headbender about it, but a successful first generation feels that they are the children of true parents. Now, I'm not talking about being the spiritual children of true parents. They literally feel like the physical children of true parents. Now, this is nothing to get all big-headed about because being born is just being born. It's what you do after you're being born. So this means that the first generation have to purge the fight with Satan, which is a fight to cast off all the doubts that Satan wants to hit us with, that we are really not the children of true parents. But once that business is done, and that's you've been there, done that, you won that fight, what does a successful first generation then look to? A successful first generation at that point starts to look to expanding the world based on his new identity. That means he is a kingdom builder. That means he wants to open kingdom-friendly businesses. He wants to have kingdom-friendly friendships. He's interested in kingdom-friendly politics. He is into kingdom-friendly fashion, kingdom-friendly humor, kingdom-friendly sports, kingdom-friendly hobbies, okay? He is completely about the whole concept of people's identity being rooted in the original parent-child relationship. If you are the children of true parents, why should you worry about anything? And I'm not talking about external worry, but why should you worry about where you're going to go in the spirit world? Why should you worry about how God thinks about you? Why should you worry about what Satan says about you? Since nothing Satan says can uproot you from who you are. So that's old business. You don't rework that old business. You can move on to actual settlement work, which happens across the Jordan River, to actually build a new place to live in. Now, it's very hard for second generation to know who they are because they are born from their first generation parents. But if their first generation parents do not live as though they themselves are born from true parents, then there is a disconnect. Now, some brilliant second generation can look into Father's words and catch what Father meant through the blessing, the 3-day ceremony, before even their parents can. And that's probably got to be rare. But do you see how difficult it would be for the physical second generation to feel connected to God's line if they look at their parents not feeling that way? So Brothers and sisters, this is the era of second generation. The spirit world wants to work with second generation, and I don't mean external second generation, but I mean people who have sold up their identity. Let me revisit this just one more time. Satan doesn't have children on purpose. His children are not really the dream of his, okay? The children of God are actually an extension of God's dream. So you being God's child means you are the walking, living dream of God. God wanted you to exist. The absolute sex of your parents was an act where God, your mother, and your father wanted you to exist. So your place in the cosmos is as permanent as your parents' conviction that they gave birth to you with God and with God's dream in mind. You should know that that's who you are. Whether you're a first generation or second generation. Of course, second generation get it by natural birth, by dwelling on, by reflecting on their natural birth process. But we have to get it through the holy wine, the blessing, and the 3-day ceremony process. But either way, you have to know that God and your true parents willed you into existence, and you're a success from the time you were born. So don't let Satan, you can't, once you have that, you must celebrate it. You must celebrate it. Whether people come to see what we have here together is not anything that I have any doubt about. If we don't celebrate who we are, because we never think about who we are, if we never celebrate who we are, because of the victory of our parents, because of the absolute sex of our parents, then what are we offering? Anyway, if you like this, like it, subscribe, share. Talk to you later.